Hey y'all, welcome in to another Saints pregame live chat. My name is Jeff Nowak, WWL's digital sports producer. I'd like to thank you for joining us on today's Ingredients for Success pregame live chat brought to you by Bud Light, with ingredients proudly displayed on the label. Yes, that is hops, barley, water, and rice. Not complicated, but always good. Make sure to enjoy a few of those today, but be careful. Don't drink and drive. Be smart out there. Have a good time. I wish I could be enjoying those with you, but I am here working because we have Saints versus Washington football team. We have another road matchup, the fourth quote unquote road matchup, the fourth road trip, if you will, in the last 5 weeks. That's going to be tough for any team. I think what's pretty clear about this team is they're good at it. They're good at going on the road. And this is a game they should win. They should have won last week. They should have won at home. But I think what you've seen is this team is more likely to lay a dud at home than they are on the road, which is something I didn't think I'd say about the Saints if you had asked me a few years ago. But that seems to be the case. The last few years you've seen them lose games at home that they shouldn't have. It happened to the Falcons in 2019, maybe 2020. I can't remember. Whatever year that. No, it was 2019. Because it was the day after LSU beat Alabama, and I thought at the time, hey, maybe they were up late watching the LSU-Alabama game. It wasn't the case last week. They didn't stay up late to enjoy that Auburn-LSU matchup, but they looked sluggish at home, and that hasn't been the case on the road. They've gone on the road and won very tough games that they were expected to struggle in, and I think that's going to be the same thing today. Another game they're going to be favored in pretty reasonably, despite injuries. But okay, first things first, make sure to throw a comment in the chat. Let me know what you're thinking. Give me your score predictions. Let me know if you have any questions throughout the day. We're going to get Inactives here in a couple minutes, and I'll try to go through those live. But before then, I'm just going to hit some key points. First, remember to check out WWL Radio on AM 870, FM 105.3. We got the pregame show going on up until kickoff at noon over on CBS. That's Christian Garrick and Bobby Hebert going to bring it up to game time and then hand it off to Mike Haas and Deuce McAllister. Make sure you tune in, sync up the broadcast to the TV. You can mute the TV. You don't need to listen to that. And you can hear from Moose, Deuce and the Moose, I think is what we've decided to call them. But until then, we're going to hit on a few things. One, I'm going to pop up the injury reports here right quick. Let me just pull those up. Normally I'd have them queued, but I forgot. Okay, there's one, and there's nothing really to make note of in the injury report this week for the Saints. It's really just the same thing we've seen the last few weeks, which is, injuries, but everyone's going to be out there that we expected to be out there. Obviously, Teron Armstead, Eric McCoy still not going to be active. The Saints have had issues along the offensive line, and it's going to be a matter of the guys who are out there continuing to pick up the slack. Here's the Saints injury report. Again, Eric McCoy has been out since week 1 with that calf injury, is not practiced. I have to imagine that the Saints were hopeful to get him back earlier than week 7 after the bye, considering they didn't put him on injured reserve and they have had him tie up a roster spot, but he's still not back. So, earliest is going to be week 7. Hopefully they can get a bunch of guys back after the bye, but that's what you're looking at there. Teron Armstead, we knew going in that he was going to be out multiple weeks. Not exactly a surprise that he was unable to go this week, but it's still going to be a loss. You're probably going to have James Hurst out there again. He's performed well the last few weeks. You're going to have Cesar Ruiz over at center. Someone filling in at guard, probably Calvin Throckmorton again. You see some other names on here. Marshawn Lattimore, again, that hand injury that he's popped up on the injury report every week the last few weeks, but he has played. Going to play with that cast again. He was a full go all week. JT Gray, he was limited with a back injury on Thursday, as it says here. Full participant on Friday. I'd expect him to be a full go. Special teams captain that you really want to have out there. Now, on the opposite side, it is not quite as rosy of a picture. So let me pop the Washington football team's injury report up here, which, as you'll see, is, in a word, extensive. As you can see, you had Antonio Gibson, Cole Holcomb, Curtis Samuel, all were limited throughout the week of practice. They're all questionable. I think you're definitely gonna see Antonio Gibson. I think these other guys is tough. Curtis Samuel missed the first few weeks of the season, but he's back, and I think he's more kind of a ramp up thing than anything else. As you can see, the only player that's out is currently blocked by my name, so I'll drop that if I can find it. Gone. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so yeah, De'Ami Brown, wide receiver, good wide receiver. He's out, so you're not gonna have to deal with him today. You're Daron Payne, another guy who didn't practice all week. He's questionable. And then you got a bunch of guys who are banged up. You know, J.D. McKissick with that ankle. He's going to be a big factor today. He's a big factor in the passing game. Cam Sims, obviously, is out, and Brandon Scherf is out. Those are two big losses, both in the passing game and the pass protection. So the Washington football team is going to have to make it work. This is a team that, you know, I think is easy to look past, but they have a lot of depth. They have a lot of depth that you don't expect. And part of that comes from drafting high for quite a long time. But they're going to be a team that you want to watch out for. I'm going to throw up a clip here momentarily. We had Bram Weinstein, the voice of the Washington football team, on Sports Talk this week, chatting with Deuce McAllister and Mike Haas. And he kind of went in on Taylor Heineke, Terry McLaurin, two very good players who are very much fulfilling the hype. It is not just noise. Taylor Heineke is in a very similar situation to what Gardner Minshew was in. If y'all remember when the Saints went to face them 2 years ago, Gardner Minshew was all the rage. Very similarly to how Taylor Heineke is now. He'd led a couple wins. He's been fiery. He's going to mix some plays. He's going to jitterbug around, and he's going to just make it happen. He has nothing to lose, right? And that's what you're going to have with Taylor Heineke, and the Saints are going to have to make him earn it. I think they can get to him. I think they can pressure him, and they can make him uncomfortable, but you have to be composed. You have to be smart. And he's going to present a lot of the similar challenges to what Daniel Jones did last week, right? He's going to try to extend plays. He's going to try to be, conservative to a point. He's going to try to let his defense do the work and take advantage of his opportunities. The Saints failed to stop those opportunities last week. That game, we can talk about Taysom Hill interceptions. We can talk about whatever you want to talk about. That game was lost on the defensive side of the ball, and it was lost on essentially 3 plays, right? It was lost on that 50-yard touchdown to John Ross. It was lost on that long touchdown to Saquon Barkley. Those were I'm sorry, let me do the math. That was 15 points. That's 15 points in the game on 2 plays. Not including the 3 plays. The 2-point conversion is the 3rd play. And so, you can play as great of a game as you want on defense. If you're allowing those chunk plays, those chunk plays for scores that even out the time of possession because they don't have to possess the ball to score, you're in trouble. You're setting yourself up to fail, and that's what the Saints did last week. So they need to avoid doing this week. Now, Terry McLaurin, excellent player, Ohio State guy. It's kind of a minor miracle he didn't end up on the Saints, considering they are the team that drafts all the Ohio State players. They draft one every year, it seems. I think they have 6 on the roster now with Lattimore, Mike Thomas, Malcolm Jenkins, Bradley Roby, Pete Werner, and I'm probably missing one other. But Ohio State players all around. Terry McLaurin is on the other team this time, so he'll be trying to win that Ohio State pride. But without further ado, here is Bram Weinstein on Sports Talk this week. I'm going to pop out and let y'all listen, and then I'll come back in. And again, going to hit some of those comments, questions at the end on the back half of the show. Thanks again for watching the Bud Light Ingredients to Success pregame live chat, and see you on the other side of this one.
They are this weekend. That was a priority in the offseason for them. They really had a couple choices. They talked about spending a lot of draft capital to potentially move up and try to make a move and get one of the rookie quarterbacks. They attempted to get Matthew Stafford. They were outbid by the Rams. So they went a different direction, and they decided to build the depth of the team, which was really necessary. I mean, they won their division a year ago, but it was at 7-9. And so they recognized that they needed to get better across the board, and they did. And you're going to see it this weekend because they had 13 guys on the injury list today, and it doesn't include the 2 that went on IR, including their best offensive lineman, Brandon Sheriff, their best tight end, Logan Thomas, their middle linebacker, John Bostic, and we're going to find out how deep they are. And as for Heineke, he wasn't supposed to be the starter. They brought in Ryan Fitzpatrick. But there's something about him. He came in off the street. I think everybody who kind of follows the league knows his story. He was in business school. He had tore up ODU, Old Dominion University, lower level college football. But he's small. He doesn't have a big arm. He doesn't look the part. He was undrafted, barely getting a shot around the league. Scott Turner, our offensive coordinator, liked him, had him up in Minnesota, brought him to Carolina. He had one opportunity to get one start, and they ran into a problem last year. Alex Smith was hurt. Dwayne Haskins ended up being benched. Kyle Allen got hurt. They ran out of quarterbacks. They bring him in. He at least knows the system. And the guy had Washington within 2 points of Tom Brady in the fourth quarter of a playoff game. So he had earned his right to compete. And they let him compete. And the fans love him. We have not had a quarterback around here who kind of shows this kind of moxie. And he's brought him back twice in both of these games. 2 scores in the fourth quarter to take leads. Not just 1, 2. And he's done it twice in the last minute. And you guys will see this weekend. I mean, we have not had someone kind of galvanize the fan base the way he has really since Robert Griffin III, at least in his rookie season. So it's been a while here. We have not been fortunate to have the greatest quarterback play for a long time around here, and I think people like Heineke. And now whether he's a flash in a pan or a fairy tale, we're not sure. We're trying to find that out.
And that's really what I was going to ask you. I mean, because that's the sentiment, from just talking to a couple of the reporters, you really don't know yet. You don't know, and that's what I was telling them. You don't know. He hadn't played enough, whether he can be the long-term answer. But just talk about Terry, McLaurin, just what he brings. And I've tried to tell people that, and his nickname is Scary Terry, but I've tried to tell he is a legit superstar in the NFL, and whether people know him or not, if he had a consistent quarterback, everybody would know it. Everybody would know exactly who he is, and just talk a little bit about he and what he brings to the team, to that offense.
He is a stud, and it's been this way since day one. And this is his third year in the league, and he was a rookie third-round pick. And I'll never forget this. In the summer, they're practicing in training camp and they're practicing, and all of a sudden the preseason games roll around. Have you ever heard of a rookie who is probably going to start not playing a single down in the preseason games, and yet all the other starters play? Because I've never heard of that. And they were hiding him. And he came out, and it was gangbusters on the Eagles week 1, 2.5 years ago now. And it's just gotten better ever since. He's a hard worker. He's a great person. He really takes this extremely seriously. I think he has the longest running streak of targets without a single drop. He hasn't dropped a pass since his rookie season. He made a couple of plays last week, including one in the fourth quarter that, it was a desperation heave up middle of the end zone, and he just bullied his way around a defensive back, made a touchdown. He's a total stud. And to your point, Deuce, he's played with 8 different quarterbacks. Think about that. In the short period of time that he's been here, 8. If and when they find whoever that guy is, whether it's Taylor Heineke or it's in the draft next year.
Unmute. All right. Well, so there that is. And Bram brought up some really good points. And, this Washington football team has been just in the wilderness trying to find a starting quarterback. They thought they had it in Alex Smith. They paid him a lot of money, and then he had that gruesome leg injury. And he's playing well. He had them with a winning record. He had them very competitive in that first season, and then he was unable to finish it out. He came back. He came back and played, which is remarkable in its own right, but he was never the same. He called back to Robert Griffin III as the last quarterback to really galvanize the fan base, and that's kind of crazy because that was so long ago. But if you remember, Robert Griffin III was a show. And they felt like they found their franchise quarterback, and then, lo and behold, a knee injury, and he's done. So I thought it was strange that they came to the season wanting to play Ryan Fitzpatrick as a starter. It didn't make sense to me because you have a young guy who's competing for the job. What's the harm in giving him a chance? Fitzpatrick got hurt, obviously, so he got in there anyway. And I think what you see is what you get. Very similar to Gardner Minshew, as I mentioned earlier. He's just a guy who's gonna try to fire you up. He's gonna make some plays that you weren't expecting, and he showed in last year's playoffs that he has enough in the tank to push some teams, right? And the NFC East is a little tougher this year, as we saw last week. The Giants are a much more competitive team than they were last year, especially early in the season. The Dallas Cowboys have an offense that is very difficult to stop. And, you kind of just see what you get there. But I'll pop some comments up here. Again, my name is Jeff Nowak, WWL digital sports producer. Be kind here. Y'all know we are ready for a big win Sunday. Who dat fam? We dat baby, with a lot of emojis. And, I would not bet against the Saints today. There's been a lot of talk about yo-yos. Sean Payton put yo-yos in everybody's locker. Doesn't want to be a yo-yo team, but that's exactly what this team is. And the thing is, they're very good at it when you get onto that, upward yo-yo week. This is a team that rarely loses back-to-back games. This is not a team that's going to come out flat after a loss. They can come out flat after a win. I don't see them coming back flat after a loss, especially kind of getting back into the normal workflow. You have to remember about last week. They were getting back home. It was a very busy week for the Saints outside of the NFL, outside of the games. They had a lot to take care of. A lot of guys had stuff with their houses they had to deal with. They had to restock their fridges. They had to go pick up their dogs for wherever they left. Stuff that you normally wouldn't have to deal with throughout a week that you could point to and say, okay, why weren't you as sharp this week as you would have expected to be in other weeks? Well, it was a weird week, right? So that's not an excuse. The Saints aren't going to use that as an excuse, and they haven't. But when you're looking for reasons for why a team just didn't look sharp, I think that's a fair one to point to. We got Michael Brown in here. What do you think is the pass blocking scheme the Saints will deploy against the Washington football team defensive front? Well, it's a good question. I think the Saints have simplified a lot of what they're doing on the offensive line to make up for the lack of Teron and Eric McCoy in the center. The communication issues that you saw in week 2 seem to have been ironed out. Jameis talked about, he's been working obviously a lot with Cesar Ruiz. That game in week 2, it's easy to forget because he played in week 1 at center, but that was his first game really going into a hostile environment and having to play center and try to figure out how to deal with the silent count, how to deal with communications, how to deal with line changes, in terms of protection, IDing the mic, making sure that there's enough blockers on each side to pick up blitzes, making sure where the hot route is, making sure the quarterback is on the same page as the protection to get the ball out. And it just failed in week 2. It's looked better weeks 3 and 4. You look at a guy like Adam Troutman, who's just not being very productive in the passing game. And, it's not hard to see why keeping him in as an extra protector on a lot of plays, max protecting on a lot more plays than you would, is a big part of that. Because you need that extra set of hands, and it's a lot harder to send a guy out in a route when you don't trust the protection. I think as you get down the road, you'll see a little more of that. But for now, and I think today specifically, in a game that you should be able to get out in front and hold the lead, I think you'll see a lot of max protect. You don't have Tony Jones; he's out. He's on IR. They signed Devin Ezigbo off of the Jacksonville Jaguars practice squad. They signed Kenny Stills to the 53-man roster, partially because they can't call him up again. They've hit their limit already. So he's going to stick around, I imagine. And, you're going to see what happens. I'm curious to see who serves as the backup running back today. Last week, Alvin Kamara didn't catch a pass. It was the first time in his NFL career he wasn't at least targeted in a game. He had one other game last year against the Falcons, a win that he didn't catch a pass. If the Saints don't trust their backup and need him to kind of be that bell cow and take those inside carries, those inside runs, then, he might have another day where he's not very active in the passing game. And it's just a matter of how much you trust Devin Ezigbo. I think they brought him back in. They went after Ezigbo specifically because he knows the playbook. He learned it. They signed him as an undrafted free agent a couple of years ago. He didn't make the roster. The Jaguars scooped him up. I think the Saints were disappointed to see that. I think they wanted to keep him around. They just couldn't. He was too good. He got scooped up. The Jaguars haven't really, found a role for him. But he'll have a role with the Saints. He will. The Saints like him. They liked him then. They like him now. He's a big guy. He's like 230 pounds. He's stocky. He's very similar to Tony Jones. I think you've seen the Saints kind of go after an archetype at that position. And he's going to be a guy who might be able to take those inside carries, those inside runs. And it's just a question of, can he operate? Can he stay on the same page as Jameis or Taysom, whoever's in there at the time, to, make sure you pick up those blitzes, right? To pick up that hot protection. You keep your quarterback alive long enough to deliver the ball. That's what he has to be able to do to get on the field today. And it's just a question of whether he can. Dwayne Washington is the only other option, really. Well, Ty Montgomery is an option as well. I don't think the Saints want to use him at running back because he has been solid in the passing game and he's important on special teams. But he's an emergency option if you want to go that route. Dwayne Washington had a rough week on the offensive side of the ball, right? He didn't get him any opportunities, and him being out there on a play that was designed for Alvin Kamara is what prompted the Saints to have some confusion and end up getting a delay of game penalty late in the game that really kind of set a drive back behind the chains. So, I'd be surprised if he's the guy, but we'll see. There might be a committee approach kind of at those junk snaps where you just want to get Kamara off the field and give him a rest because you want to make sure you just don't overload him, right? All right, we have Kittrell White here. Do you think that Coach Payton will open up the playbook a little more for Winston today? It's such an abstract idea, right? The idea of opening up the playbook because you're really looking at, are you taking your shots down the field, or are you are you running those kind of 4 wide, 5 wide sets where you're really trusting the offensive line to block? That's what you're talking about when you're saying open up the offense. It's not like Sean's calling a play and saying, okay, don't throw it if there's a guy in coverage. Don't push the ball downfield because we're worried that it's going to get tipped up for an interception. It's about making the right read and understanding when you need to just eat it and live to play another down. I think that the offense itself isn't being like throttled. You're just not being as aggressive. So the question is, are you going to see a more kind of spread out Saints offensive attack today than you did last week? I don't think so. I don't think that you can do that until you get your offensive line at least, somewhat back together where you trust it, especially on the road, especially against a team with a really aggressive pass rush and Chase Young, Montez Sweat. I think that's the right name. Anyway, so I don't think so. I think you're going to see a more concerted effort to get Alvin Kamara the ball in space. I think when you're talking about opening up the offense in that regard, I think that's how you do it because you're still down your pass catchers. You still don't have Traquan Smith or Michael Thomas. You still don't have, key players on defense. And it's just, you're trying to win games, right? You don't want to go into the bye week at 2-3. You just don't. It's just not where you want to be. You need to play a good game. You need to play a smart game. Anytime after a loss, it seems like the issues get overblown and you pretend this was the only way that game could have played out, right? The Saints win that game 9 times out of 10. The Giants deserve a lot of credit for taking advantage on their opportunities. I mean, they were down 11 points with 8 minutes left? The Saints won that game and found a way to lose it. That doesn't mean they couldn't have won that game. And the issue didn't come on offense. The issue was on defense where you lost your composure on those 2 specific plays and got burned. And the NFL is a cruel game. Those 2 plays, how many possessions are there in a game? How many scores are there in a game, right? If you don't make the other team work for their scores, they're going to have a much easier time to beat you. If those are even 4, 5, 6 play drives, that changes the equation. And that's just, that's something that happens in the NFL. So I'm not going to put too much on the offense. I think the offense played a good game. I think they're executing about as well as you can under the circumstances. And it just didn't work out last week. It was kind of a freak result, and you're going to see what happens. But I don't think that you're going to see this offense, this team overreact a little bit. I think what you want to see is Jameis feeling a little more empowered within that offense, right? Still making those good decisions, but not looking like he's thinking. He's actively computing what he needs to do, just reacting and understanding and going through his progressions and making the right throws. I still think you're going to see a lot of Taysom Hill, and a lot of people seem upset about that, and I don't know why. It's a subset of the offense that is a distinct advantage for the Saints, right? Jameis doesn't mind seeing Taysom out on the field. Who does mind seeing Taysom out on the field? The defense. They don't want to deal with it. And that is enough reason alone to incorporate that into your offense. Now, do I want to see Taysom going out there and throwing shot plays and heaving it down the field well behind Deontay Harris? No, I don't. But in order for that system to be more effective, in order for that subset of the playbook to be more effective, you have to at least keep the defense honest that you might throw it, right? And, you can call it an arm punt, whatever. On 1st and 20, I think that's a good time to take a shot. It didn't work. Otherwise, that part of the offense has been the most effective part of the offense. And it's not a debate. I mean, how many first downs has Taysom Hill rolled up? How efficient have the Saints been in the red zone? Outside of fantasy football, there's no reason to be discouraged by what the Saints are doing with Taysom Hill. It's been effective, and it's been very difficult to stop, especially in the red zone, especially late in games. So they're going to keep doing it. They're going to keep trying to just beat you up on this side of the ball, and it's just a matter of the defense doing its job. This is an elite defense that did not look elite in very important moments last week, and that's the part of this. That's the side of the football that I'm watching to see if they can bounce back. Because the offense, as long as they're not turning the ball over, as long as they're putting up points, you should be able to win football games. Now, wasn't the case last week. See if it's the case this week. Saints won't win unless they start getting to the quarterback. I agree with this. I mean, that pass rush, you need to be able to get to the quarterback. You need to see some production out of Peyton Turner. You need to see some production out of Carl Granderson. You need to see some production out of, the ends in general. This is still a team trying to figure it out without their interior defensive line, but they have held up pretty well in the run game. No one's really gashed them. Christian McCaffrey had a big game, but he didn't do it between the tackles. They need to be able to make Taylor Heineke uncomfortable. But, I think this is a similar game to, Taylor Heineke reminds me a lot of Bo Nix. If you watched the LSU Auburn game last week, he has a very similar type of just kind of deceptive speed, deceptive athleticism, and he extends plays, and is good at finding people downfield. I think he might actually be a better quarterback when he gets flushed and he kind of has to create off schedule. It's what he does well. He's the type of guy who you want to kind of hem in the pocket, force him to be a pocket passer. He's not a big guy. He's going to have trouble creating when, there's a lot of bodies around him. And so to me, that's kind of what you want to do. I don't like the idea of just rushing upfield with reckless abandon and letting him get outside and roll out and just extend. Then you end up with linemen chasing him around, tiring themselves out. And then you give the receivers downfield plenty of time to just kind of ad lib. I don't want to see that happening. I want to see them hem in. I want to see contain rushes, and I want to see that defensive interior really get upfield. I wouldn't mind seeing NASCAR packages where you kind of just get in and try to collapse the middle of the pocket. I think what people tend to forget is there's a lot more responsibility on the ends than simply getting to the quarterback. I agree with this. The defensive line needs to affect the quarterback for the Saints to win. They don't necessarily need to get sacks. I think sacks are one of the more overrated stats in the NFL in most instances. Obviously, when you see the impact sacks, they kind of speak for themselves. But, the pass rush can impact the passer without even getting there. You have to be able to do that. And that's the big thing. You play a lot of man-to-man. If you're playing man-to-man and you allow the quarterback to extend outside of the pocket, you're going to get burned. It's impossible. I don't care how good of a corner you are or a defensive back you are. If the quarterback and the wide receiver have 10 seconds, you're going to get beat eventually. It's just a matter of time, and you got to figure it out. Is a follow-up from Jason. Yeah, I agree with you on this for sure. It is not the offense; it's the lack of a pass rush. I would put, I would add an addendum here that the defensive backs need to make plays on the ball. I don't think they need to cheat to do that. I think they're good enough that they don't have to. And the Saquon Barkley touchdown in the second half that really kind of swung the momentum about as sharply as you can came on a play where Marshawn Lattimore had his eyes in the backfield. I don't think he necessarily respected the speed of Saquon behind him. And, he got kind of caught in no man's land and, it was over. Marcus Williams has improved drastically as a tackler since his rookie season, since, that play we don't need to talk about. But I don't care who you are. When you get Saquon Barkley in space, and you can't funnel him one way or the other. You can't funnel him to the sideline. You can't funnel him to help in the middle of the field. You're just on an island, and he can go either direction. He's gonna get by you. At best, you're gonna trip him. There's only so much you can do. It's like trying to tackle a tree stump. And hey, Marcus made contact. That's better than a lot of people do in that situation. But yeah, I mean, I think that this is about the defense, right? And the season's going to be about the defense. Can the defense be that elite title caliber group that we've seen in set stretches that we saw in week 1, that we saw in week 3? They were undermanned in week 2 and they got burned a little bit by the Panthers, but and we saw that for most of the game in week 4, at least in the coverage respect. And they got burned and they didn't hold up downfield, and that's where you got to see differences. Jason's busy. Yeah, I think you need to see more Bradley Roby. It's interesting to see how they've kind of split that up, and and suddenly this cornerback position that was a huge concern heading into the year is now this position where you can't even find snaps for Bradley Roby. But I think it's more about kind of learning the system, learning the schemes. You do need to see more Bradley Roby. He's going to be a factor. But remember, it's not easy to come into a system and pick it up in a week. I think it's more about the Saints trusting Paulson Adebo to allow Bradley Roby to really get up to speed. Keep in mind, Bradley Roby had not played in a game since from week 11 of last year until week 2 of this season, right? So even in the sense that he's a little rusty from just playtime, from a playtime perspective, that's definitely true. So there's a lot more than just learning the playbook. I think by week 5 you should be expected to be kind of more up to speed in that, and I think if that's the case, you'll see more of him today. But I mean, as long as you're healthy at that position and you think Ken Crawley's going to come back, another veteran guy that is excellent depth on the outside, he's going to play. He's going to play, and it's just a matter of when you're going to get him in there. I'm taking the Saints big today. I don't think it's going to be a close game. I've seen the Saints play this game. It's never close. The only time it was close was in Jacksonville, and it was really the only reason it was close was because the Saints offense didn't score. But I don't think that Taylor Heineke is going to figure it out. I think this defense is going to come up and make a statement, and we're going to see what that statement is. Again, my name is Jeff Nowak, WWL digital sports producer. I'm going to hop off here and let y'all, get ready for kickoff. We got about 70 minutes ahead of kickoff over on CBS. Still an hour. Well, actually, Jason has one more question. We're still an hour away from kickoff. And let me see if we have an inactives list that I can share with you before I let y'all go. There we go. So, yeah, the inactives are not particularly surprising. Teron, Ian Book inactive again. Defensive end Jalen Holmes is inactive. Lil Jordan Humphrey, Eric McCoy, Desmond Trufant are all the inactives. Christian Ringo had his contract terminated. Obviously, as I mentioned before, you have Kenny Stills signed to the active roster and Jordan Mills elevated from the practice squad. Washington's inactives: De'Ami Brown, Cam Sims, Danny Johnson, Shaka Toney, Brandon Scherf, Jace Sternberger. So to answer your question, Jason, it appears Curtis Samuel is active. I don't know how much he'll play in the game, but he is active. So you probably will see him out there, which is important for them because, as I just mentioned, they don't have De'Ami Brown or Cam Sims. So he's going to be an important part across from Terry McLaurin. Yeah, this has been a problem for the last few years. It's a problem whenever you're a good team. It's inevitable. You end up, the motivation. I don't know if motivation is the word. Kind of the juice, the energy that you bring into a game. It's harder to manufacture when it's not that kind of premier matchup, and you got to figure it out. The Saints have been good in most respects. Like I said, when you see them lay a dud, a lot of times it's at home in these situations. When you have that really kind of heavy underdog coming into New Orleans, and I think you kind of rely on that crowd energy to help fuel you. And sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It hasn't been the case on the road. The Philadelphia game last year, notwithstanding, that was a tough one. You're the fourth game with Taysom Hill. I think people start to figure him out after a while, and it didn't work out. But I don't think it's going to be the case today. But yeah, anyway, back to what I was saying. WWL Radio, AM 870, FM 105.3. You got Christian Garrick and Bobby Abear bringing you up to kickoff. I'm going to hand off to Mike Haas and Juice McAllister on the play or on the game call. Remember, Washington football team, not Washington Redskins. As Mike Haas pointed out earlier today, they actually have like a swear jar, if you will, that the announcers are supposed to put $20 in if they use the wrong name. So it'll be interesting to see if there's any money in that by the end of the day. Remember to check us out on Facebook, WWL Radio, on YouTube at WWL Sports. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Over on Twitter at WWL AM FM. You can follow me over on Twitter at Jeff_Nowak. That's my name at the bottom there. And, make sure to check out Audacy.com/WWL for all of our pregame content. Been writing a lot this week. My biggest prediction is you're going to see a much more active Alvin Kamara in the passing game than we have seen in the last couple of weeks, because as the great Keyshawn Johnson, Michael Thomas's uncle, once said, "Throw me the damn ball," or "Get me the damn ball," whatever, however he said it. Get Alvin Kamara the damn ball. Even he won't say it. I will get him the damn ball. Anyway, my name is Jeff Nowak. Thanks again for watching the Bud Light Ingredients to Saints Success live chat. Remember, Bud Light ingredients proudly displayed on the label. Let's see if I can remember them from memory. Hops, barley, water, rice. That's it. That's all you got, but it's good. Enjoy the game with Bud Light, and please don't drink and drive. And, let's see what happens. All right. Thanks, everyone, for joining in, and peace.